As you're building your application, you're going to find that there's bits of your query that you're reusing everywhere. And we can extract that out into a reusable function rather than having it everywhere using a model query builder macro from Lucid. So to walk through this in today's example, I have a simple dashboard with some counts. We're counting the users, the posts published, the total runtime of videos, active series, and topics covered. Most of these, so those two and these two, are running counts, and then this one's running a sum. And if we jump into the code for this, we have our count post publish, applying in the publish scope, which scopes are a perfect alternative to this approach that we're going to be showing here today if what you need to apply is bound to a specific model. Then we're running the count and plopping it into an alias called total, getting the first result, and then from that first result, specifically reaching for the extras object and that total value. Doing something relatively similar for our sum as well, the column specification here being the main differentiator. In terms of defining these macros, we need to define them in a place that's going to be executed as our application boots up. So a preload is a perfect spot for that, as they're preloaded during the application's boot cycle. So if we dive into our terminal, we can run node ace make preload. I'm going to put these inside of a macros folder, as quite a lot with AdonisJS is macroable. They request, response, application, all that fun stuff. So if you're creating any additional macros, we now have a folder to plop them in. And we'll call this one specifically our Lucid Query Builder macros. We can hit enter to create that file, and it's going to ask if we want to register this preload inside of our adonisrc.ts file. We do, so that it automatically runs and executes during our boot. And now we can jump back into our text editor, and we can see inside of our start directory, this is where preloads are created within. We now have a macros folder and our Lucid Query Builder macro file. So let's start with our GetCount. So we'll import the model query builder from AdonisJS Lucid ORM, and off of this we have a macro function that we can call. The first argument of this function is the name of the macro. This is the name of the function as we'll use it inside of the Lucid Query Builder. So we'll call ours GetCount. The second argument is the actual function that will run whenever this macro is called. So we'll define a function there, and this is provided this, which is an instance of the model query builder. So we'll type that with model query builder like so. Add in the curly braces for our function. And now if we do this dot, you'll see that we have all of our query builder methods readily available at our disposal. So we could do this dot count star as total, just as we're doing inside of our actual query right here. And while we're in here, let's go ahead and just cut all of that out, jump back into our macros, and we can drop that directly off of this. For the most part, this will be correct. The only change that we need to make is what model we're referencing. We no longer specifically know that we're working with the post model, so we need to make this more vague. And a good type for that is our Lucid row. We can import that from AdonisJS Lucid types model. And Lucid row is a type that all of our model rows extend off of. So it's a perfect use case here because it's vague, so any model can use it, but it also knows about our extras object and its type. So that we can get the result of this query back, we're going to want to return. So instead of just calling this count, we want to return the result of it. And let's go ahead and give it a save so that we fix up a number of our red squigglies. You'll notice that one did not go away, the name for our get count. And if we hover over it to see what the error is, we see argument of type getCount is not assignable to parameter of type key of model query builder. In essence, TypeScript doesn't know about this key, so we need to inform it about that next. So we'll want to declare module and reach for the @AdonisJS Lucid ORM namespace. This is that namespace where the model query builder is coming from right here. And by declaring a module there, we can now reach for that interface directly. So model query builder and extend off of it. So we'll add our getCount function and specify that it's going to return a promise. And I believe the results of counts come back as a big int. So we'll type it as such. And with that, you'll see that our red squiggly goes away, but we're not quite done yet. We can go ahead and give this file a save. Let's jump over to our get dashboard counts now and attempt to use it. So if we do dot, we can try to reach for get count and you'll see that it's not readily available. If we take a look at the reason why by hovering over it, we'll see property get count does not exist on type model query builder contract for the post model. So there's two different types at play here deriving what's available to us. We have the model query builder that makes the name of our macro happy, but we also have the model query builder contract that informs the method is available to use. So if we jump back into our macros, let's go ahead and declare module @AdonisJS/Lucid/types/model, as this is the location where the interface for the model query builder contract resides in. If we add our getCount function here, specify that it returns a promise of big int, you'll notice that we have a red squiggly on our model query builder contract now. All declarations in model query builder contract must have identical type parameters. And we can see on the interface for this type parameter, we have model extends Lucid model and result equals instant type model. And conveniently, we can write from this tooltip, just select that type parameter, give it a copy, and paste it in as the type parameter of our model query builder contract usage. So now we have everything in this file happy. And if we jump over to our get dashboard count, where we're trying to make use of that get count macro, it's now happy as well. If we give this file a save, so we can try jumping back over into our browser, let's give this page here a refresh for sanity's sake. And everything's still working a-okay. That was our post-publish count, which is still being populated. In addition to that, we can jump back over to our text editor. We're using that same count right here, so we can replace that with GetCount as well. And we're also using it here, so we can do .getCount there. And we have one more right down here. So .getCount, give those a save, jump back over into our browser, give it a refresh, and sure enough, everything is still working a-okay. So that's one instance, but what about macros that we need to pass arguments into? If we jump back into our text editor, back into our model query builder macros, I just realized I call this Lucid query builder macros. I typically call it model query builder macros, but whichever works fine there. We have another usage where we're getting a sum rather than a count. So we can do model query builder, call the macro function called get sum. And this one's going to need a function that takes in this. Again, the type's going to be model query builder. And the second argument here is how we can accept things in to this macro function. For example, in order to count something, we need to know what column it is that we need to sum up. So we'll want to accept a column of type string in there so that we know what column it is we're summing. We can then return this dot sum, pass that column in, and then just as we are with the others, call first to get the first result, dot then find that result, type it as lucid row or null. Since we're only doing first, it's going to be nullable, and then return back the result, reach through the extras, and get the sum key. That leaves us with our red squiggly on the name because we still need to inform our types about it. So we'll start with our model query builder contract, get sum, specify that this accepts a parameter called column of type string and returns back a promise of type big int. We can give that there a copy and paste it down for our model query builder type now, and everything here should be happy. We should be able to jump back into our counts and now replace, let's see, it's our get post seconds. So we should be able to replace this portion right here with our get sum to sum up the video seconds and get the total back. So if we give that a save, let's jump back into our browser once more, give it a refresh, and voila, that's still working a-okay. So that is how you can add reusable methods onto your model query builders. Remember, these macros are going to be made available on all your model query builders. If you have specific models that need specific methods, that's where you'd want to reach for something like scopes.